Hi, welcome, and glad you are here. So good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, depending upon where you are. I'm Steve McKechnie, and thank you for joining us, Finance Transformation with Journal Entry. And so with one of our clients, Dexcom, we're going to be presenting today what we did together, what we enjoyed doing, maybe some lessons learned as well. So very briefly, like I said, I'm Steve McKechnie. I lead RGP's BlackLine practice, and really glad that you are here with us. And most importantly, with me is Shannon, who was our client leader sponsor at Dexcom and is with us today, and really look forward to everyone hearing from Shannon. And Shannon, I'm going to let you introduce yourself and take it away.
Thanks, Steve. Hi, everyone. My name is Shannon Comrie-Booth, and I am the Senior Manager of Accounting for Dexcom Inc. I manage the company's GL team, and I was lucky to be the project manager on the BlackLine implementation of the journal entry functionality, as well as some account optimizations for account recs that we did. So just some background on our history with Dexcom's history with BlackLine. We initially implemented BlackLine in late 2017, starting with tasks and about 20 to 25 users. At that time, Dexcom was using tasks in order to serve as document retention and evidence of review of journal entries that were posted directly in Oracle EBS, our ERP system. It was implemented as part of the finance and accounting team's initiative to go paperless. And then after implementation of tasks, Dexcom was using about 500 tasks per month, both for journal entry documentation and evidence of reviews, as well as periodic accounting-related task reminders such as running revals, generating monthly reports, performing quarterly audits, etc. Then Dexcom implemented account reconciliations in 2018. The company did a very slow rollout of account recs, starting with key recs prepared by the GL team for its main U.S. entity, and then full implementation of all recs prepared for its U.S. and Canadian entities, as well as some select recs for its other foreign entities. Full implementation of account recs was completed by the end of Q1 2019, with about 220 recs being prepared per month. When I started at Dexcom in July of 2019, one of the continuous improvement strategies that was identified for the accounting team was implementation of BlackLine Journals. Our goal in implementing BlackLine Journals was to streamline our journal entry review and posting process. Prior to implementing BlackLine journal entries, preparers would prepare manual journal entries in Excel, upload them into Oracle EBS, and then save the journal entry and supporting documentation in BlackLine tasks. Reviewers would then review the journal entries and supporting documentation saved within BlackLine tasks, and separately review the journal entries uploaded directly in EBS, essentially duplicating our reviews. Considering we were posting about 200 to 250 manual journal entries per month at that time, when we first implemented tasks, these duplicative reviews added significant time and inefficiencies to our monthly close. In addition, I think the bigger part of this, reviewing and posting entries this way increased the risk of discrepancies between the entries uploaded in EBS and the journal entry support saved in BlackLine tasks. This is especially true when we would have multiple iterations of journal entries as a result of reviews or changes in estimates or information from the business. We'd also grown significantly from our initial implementation of BlackLine. We now had about 45 plus users posting anywhere from 300 to 400 journal entries per month. So we estimated by implementing BlackLine Journals, we would save a full day of review time each month, which would help with our corporate goal of shortening our monthly close. In addition, we estimated savings in internal and external audit hours and external audit fees due to decreased audit risks from elimination of these duplicative journal entry reviews. So when we started the process of looking into going live with BlackLine Journals, we first contacted our BlackLine account rep, who provided a demo of the journal entry functionality, which we used to develop our internal business case to present to our IT steering committee. Based on the demo, we knew we would need a third-party implementation partner because our internal bandwidth and experience with BlackLine. Most of our internal journal entry implementation team, which was primarily the GL team, and myself as internal project manager, had joined Dexcom well after we implemented BlackLine tasks. And so we were all relatively new to BlackLine and wanted to ensure a successful implementation. So we worked with our BlackLine account rep to obtain a list of third-party implementation partners, and we ultimately selected RGP based both on their experience in implementing journals with companies utilizing Oracle EBS, as well as their realistic timelines and implementation style. And who doesn't love Steve and Herman? So of course we had to select them. And once we selected RGP, we started the process of planning the implementation, including determining system requirements and finalizing the project timeline based on our desired go-live date of October 2020. As a side note, included in the journal's implementation project, SOW, that we had created, there was also a secondary project to optimize our account recs, which we planned to work on while journals were in the BlackLine development stage. Now I'll turn it over to Steve to discuss the project plan.
Thank you, Shannon. At a very high level, this is a plan, and a couple of things we really wanted to bring out here. When companies are used to, or customers are used to using BlackLine recs and tasks, matching, variants, those are a bit more iterative or agile, if you will, in approach. With journal entry, you have to take a bit more of a waterfall approach. And so we always like to convey that up front because it is a little bit different. It requires a bit more planning on the front end, and it requires more involvement from IT than maybe with some of the other BlackLine products. That's not a bad thing, it's just you need to know that going in, and that's why planning is so important. And so, as you'll see here with journal entry, it's really three key steps. The analyze and design, or this was an Oracle ERP. For SAP, folks are used to the term blueprinting. So the upfront part here was to really design and standardize, from 400 JEs that were being done, and get it standardized down to maybe just a couple of templates, JE templates. And so that is part of that analysis, design, and the deliverable is the workbooks, if you will. And so with those workbooks, those are handed off to BlackLine to do the development. Typically 4, 6, 8 weeks. It varies, it depends, it's not a bad thing. And so that's that second part there with the gold, dark gold bar, which is that 4, 6, 8 weeks where BlackLine is in development. Simultaneously during that time, working with Dexcom, getting prepared for the testing and training, as well as, and that's what that blue bar is at the bottom, doing some optimization of recs. If you noticed, Dexcom went from about 20 users to 45 users. That's over double in size, and with a lot of those folks, they were never part of the original BlackLine implementation. So as part of that optimization, there was some enhanced training, there was settings review, all of this to really, while BlackLine is doing development on the JE portion, it's helping Dexcom get even more efficiencies out of what Dexcom had. Another client of ours uses the term, get more out of what you have now. Well, this was an opportunity to help Dexcom get more out of what Dexcom already had. And so with that optimization, as well as preparing for that third step, when BlackLine had come back, BlackLine development had come back, that's when we got to get into that third step, the config, the test, the train, the transition. And this is where there may be a couple of iterations. You try to keep those managed, keep them tight, because you don't want to have your duration go too long. You don't want to have costs go up. But all of this is to help the client, and how our approach with Dexcom, as with all our clients, is for them to be able to own the solution. So not just here's what you have, but the why and the how behind it. And as you can imagine, with some of these iterations, IT does need to be involved, the client IT team. so that they also understand what is going on. And we'll come to lessons learned here in a little bit to talk about where IT needs to be involved and why they need to be involved early on. And so really wanting to make sure that things are managed properly, you start with a plan. And I'll just say it one more time, and then we'll go into some of the results from this effort. It does take a bit more of a waterfall mindset as opposed to iterative, which you probably had with the recs, the tasks, matching, etc. This will be something you will need to have with your IT team to make sure they're aware of it, not to trigger some sort of philosophical debate, but that there is a bit more required on the planning side because of how JE is done. That's not to scare you, that's just setting expectations, because what's going to be really cool is Shannon's going to share with you what the outcomes were.
Great, thanks, Steve. Yeah, so the results, I mean, while any system implementation has its pain points, I believe we had a very successful implementation, thanks both to RGP and the BlackLine development team. I mean, with regards to journals implementation, we were able to replace all of our manual journal entries and uploads in Oracle EBS with journal entries in BlackLine. This has both reduced the amount of time our preparers spend preparing journal entries in Excel and review time. So it's allowed us to reduce our monthly close from 7 to 6 days, which was one of our corporate goals, and it's been a game changer for us. The other, huge result of implementing journals was being able to reduce audit risk of discrepancies between our journal entry support and journal entries posted. For our 2020 audit, we had no issues identified with journals, which is fabulous. Both of our, our internal and external audit teams have both been very pleased with implementation of BlackLine Journals, and we've been able to significantly improve journal accuracy and also reduce auditor time spent locating journal entry support. And the auditors are able to utilize certification details within BlackLine for journal entries to identify whether or not a journal entry had comments and resulted in it being rejected, or whether or not it was approved the initial review. So it helps them identify what journals to look for that had review comments. In terms of training, prior to implementation of journal entries, RGP provided a very robust training on journals, as well as a quick user's guide that we prepared internally and provided to all users. The training and guide provide users with all key information they needed to enter and post journals. So the questions we got post-implementation were very minimal. For our account rec optimization project, prior to optimization, we were really utilizing little to none of BlackLine's account rec functionality. Users were preparing account recs in Excel and just attaching them as support documents in BlackLine. So in order to optimize our existing account recs, RGP worked with each functional group in accounting to identify account recs specific to those groups. So example, for GL team, looking at fixed asset recs were very specific to us. And then RGP was able to optimize those recs by identifying specific tools for those types of recs, including subledger uploads, account groupings, and amortizable items tables. These smaller group working sessions really enabled us to tailor the sessions to the specific needs of each group and increased user participation and buy-in. Post-account rec optimization, we have seen a vast improvement in the setup of account recs in BlackLine, reduction in the use of manual Excel account recs, and overall increased efficiencies from utilization of BlackLine account reconciliation functionality. We've also seen a lot of positive comments from our auditors as well that the recs are cleaner, there's more support, and the support that's provided is much clearer as a result of the optimization. And then I think lastly, in terms of results, the journals implementation especially, and account rec optimization as well, have really created a solid foundation for continuous improvements with BlackLine. since the journals implementation, we've continued to look at what additional functionality can we add in BlackLine, some of which is already included in what we pay for monthly, and we just haven't started utilizing it. And some of it is stuff that would be an additional implementation, and we want to go down that road. So the first thing that we've done is we've implemented BlackLine Teams. That has been very beneficial for us. It both allows our functional teams to have better access and insight into their group's journals, account recs, and tasks, but it also has reduced time that our system admins are spent creating new or reassigning existing journals, recs, and tasks when preparers or reviewers leave the company or someone's out on leave or vacation. We're in the process right now of developing a proof of concept for transaction matching and automated journals. Right now, it's specifically focused on cash accounts and transactions, but we expect that it will be expanded over time, and we anticipate that we'll go live with that functionality in 2022. We're also in the process of implementing the notebook functionality in BlackLine. That was something that our account rep brought to us and said, this is something you guys should look at. It's going to allow us to house all of our review comments within BlackLine for internal, external audit. And so it'll save us time from trying to hunt down emails and other, messaging and all of that as evidence of review comments. So we are hoping to have this implemented by Q3 of this year, end of Q3 this year. And then we continue to focus on improvement and increased utilization of BlackLine account rec functionality to increase our efficiencies in prepping and reviewing account recs. So in terms of lessons learned, I think we've learned a lot from the system implementation. Like Steve mentioned, it really is different in many ways from other implementations in terms it does have to be a waterfall setup for your implementation. You really want to do as much as possible at the beginning to plan and look at what your system requirements are to make sure that you are going forward with the best decision or the best choice for your company. So, the first lesson we learned was keep it simple. Really focus on what your essential system requirements are and how to meet those without adding unnecessary specialization or complexity. We were using a couple different templates to upload an EBS, but everyone had different journal templates that they were saving in Excel. And what we determined during planning for us was that we only needed 2 standardized templates, one for entries booked in functional currency and one for entries booked in non-functional currency. It made it so much simpler for users to determine which template to use. They're only using one standard template generally, and it's much simpler than for us to set up journal masters. And Steve, do you have any feedback on this one?
No, I nailed it. That's absolutely right. Want to keep it simple. And again, you went from 400 JEs able to be done in 2 JE templates. Keep it simple, and like you said, planning ahead is key and critical. Those data collection workbooks, once those are completed and handed off to BlackLine development, I don't want to say it's locked, but you want to make sure that you've had those decisions up front. And again, the goal to keep it simple and involving multiple groups, including IT. I think we're going to get to that one here in a second, so I won't jump the queue on that quite yet.
Okay. So the second lesson learned is keep your team involved. I can't stress how important this is, especially in a remote working environment. We started the journal entry project in April of last year and went live in October. So the entire project for us was completed entirely remotely. So we really focused on communicating early and often to ensure that users and key stakeholders were receiving updates at least weekly. One of the other successful things we did is that RGP led weekly working sessions with our internal and external project team members so that we could address open items in real time because group emails can sometimes become very burdensome and counterproductive. And then, we prepared our teams for key project milestones and go live dates by holding informational sessions, training sessions, sending email blasts, anything we could do to get it in front of everyone's eyes so that by the time we went live, they had all of the information and knowledge they needed to be able to go live with the project. Steve, you have anything you want to add to that?
Yeah, in fact, I'll segue it into our third one here as well. No, that absolutely, you cannot, the danger is under communicating. Making sure folks know what's going on, what's being done. Don't wait till a status meeting to resolve an issue or try to fix something. Do it real time and have that regular cadence. Keep going. And I'm going to segue into 3 here a little bit, is getting IT and data teams involved early, particularly around JE, where IT may have some security questions. They may have some philosophical decisions that they may want to discuss. Web services being one. Oh, never mind. That jumped that one. We'll come back to that in a sec. But making sure IT is involved, particularly around the security of data, the extraction, as well as the data integrity within the ERP. And wanting to make sure everybody is on board, understanding what is going on, what is coming next. And while we understand that sometimes the business doesn't want to get in IT or the data teams involved too early, you really want to get them involved early in the process for JE, so as part of the decision making, because you don't want to have surprises later or delays later. You want to get them out on the table up front. How's that, Shannon?
I 100% agree. For us, we had some very specific requirements related to Oracle, and we had to get IT involved early. If we hadn't, we would have never been able to go live in the timeline that we had. They really needed to be involved from day one, and I think it's so important to make sure that IT feels like they are involved and active or participants in any implementation, even if you feel like their role may be minimal, really, because invariably something will come up that they're going to have to address. And the earlier you have them involved, the more invested they are in the process, the more likely they are to be helpful, think big picture, and focus on solutions rather than just trying to meet the immediate need. And that segues into our next lesson learned, which is really focusing your IT team on solutions and decisioning. As Steve has mentioned, really having the discussions early in the project during that planning phase of what are your system requirements in terms of interfaces, integrations with your ERP, especially for journals, is so vital. We didn't end up going with web services. We went with OIC, and it's one of the things that I felt like was the one thing we didn't do correctly in this implementation. If IT had really been more invested about what's going to be best long run, web services is the way we would have gone. And I know that Steve will say this as well. Please focus, please consider web services at the very beginning for journals, because it is the best tool that you're going to get for it in terms of processing time. We love Blackline Journals. We have such great experience with it. The one downside with using OIC for it is that it takes about 2 minutes to process a journal. If you use web services, it's seconds. And so if you're considering journals implementation, definitely look at web services. It's one of the best things that you can do with journals. And that's one of the things that your IT team needs to be involved, because those interfaces will need IT to be able to look at what your specific system requirements are and how you can make it work for you. Steve, I know you probably have some feedback on this one as well.
I do. Ultimately, it is the client's decision, and I know that we had some robust conversations around it as a team, this IT, business, RGP, BlackLine, in all of this. And with web services, we did have an opinion on it. Dexcom decided not to, but this is part of having those discussions early and wanting to make sure everybody understands the pros, the cons, not just the short term, but the long term as well. And making sure getting the right solution going forward when you look at what's it going to take to maintain it, what is the response time in this particular case. you know, how many places do we have to make sure that we do the same step just to make sure we ensure data integrity? So these are some of those robust conversations to have on the front end, not to have necessarily a philosophical debate halfway through a project that could slow it down. So again, support the client, the decision, because you guys are going to own it long term. But we strongly recommend with our clients having that web services conversation, or what the alternatives are, as in understanding that internally, again, the short term and the long term. And then with UAT, this is when it gets real. And this is part of, in addition to the users furthering their training, UAT back to planning. You know, how do you have an effective UAT? And I'm going to segue to Shannon so I don't steal her thunder.
Oh, no. But yeah, I 100% agree. User acceptance testing was something that we really focused on. We didn't want to take any chances that we would go down the route of completing UAT and then something come up post-implementation that would slow us down, especially with journals, because it does affect, you know, our accounting flows. So we spent a lot of time coming up with a UAT plan. One of the things that we did, which I think worked really well for us, is we took an entire month's journal entries from a prior month and used those as our testing population for UAT. We've tested over 400 journal entries in total, I believe, and it allowed us to test real-world examples, things that we were posting every month that we may not have identified if we, just made up some examples to test. And just having that volume also gave us the opportunity to see different things in real time. And there'd be multiple iterations of things we would, one of the things we identified was related to our cross-validation rules, that they didn't work appropriately with the way we had originally set up journals. We needed to go back to development and fix that so that it would work correctly. And this gave us the opportunity to test it in multiple rounds so that by the time we went live, we didn't have a single BlackLine support issue. Our post-implementation, our first month posting journal entries, we closed a day early. It was very clean. Everyone was very happy with the results. And I think that's a testament to really devoting that time to user acceptance testing. And then, last point, keep planning. Yeah, keep planning. I mean, as I mentioned on the previous slide, BlackLine has so many different tools you can use to create efficiencies and improve your accounting processes, and many of them build off the implementation of others. So we implemented journals, and now we're looking at transaction matching and automated journals, and we wouldn't have been able to do those without first implementing journals, but now the transaction matching and automated journals piece of it is going to be a much smaller project, much more manageable and easy to take on as a result. So looking at all the different tools you can, and keep working on continuous improvement, because there is so much that BlackLine can offer. I'm sure you have some stuff to add on that, Steve.
Yeah, I do. There's always room for improvement, and I know that for some folks that can sound negative. It's actually positive. There's always room for improvement. It could be that we know additional regulations are coming in. How do we deal with that? It could be as simple as, I want to have that one weekend a month back every month that I lose due to my monthly close. So it could be, I just want to have my weekend back, that first weekend of every month. But as you can tell, Shannon really has adopted, loves, pushes that continuous improvement. And what can we do more? How can we do more? And like she said, matching, notebooks, so many other things, continuing to improve and increase the auto reconciliation rate. And so all of these things, keeping it going forward. And like I said, this to me is the more challenging one. We know there aren't going to be fewer regulations. So how do we prepare for that? How do we further optimize? How do we continue transforming the finance organization? And Shannon, thank you so much. This has been great. Thank you, everyone, for being with us. Here's Shannon and my contact information. If you want to reach out at some point, or just drop Shannon a note and tell her thank you. She's fantastic. We love working with Shannon. Just drop her a note of appreciation and a question if you want as well. And then just very briefly, here's a little bit about RGP. So there you have it. This deck will be provided or be available later for drop down. But let me come back over here to the lessons learned. I think these are the key takeaways that you want to have, that you want to like, well, I want to be like Shannon. What can I do next? These are the things that you can come out of a great JE implementation. So thank you so much. I'm going to hand the microphone back to Mike, and thank you again. Thank you, Shannon.
Thank you, Steve.